Hello, everyone. Welcome to Africa Fire Mission's virtual training session for today. Appreciate all of you taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and join us for some training today. Today, we have Russell Osgood with us. Russell's going to be teaching us about cancer awareness. And it's going to be a great class. We hope all of you can stick around. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's class, we'll be issuing a certificate for you. So be sure that the names that you have on your screen are the names that you want to see on that certificate. After we complete today's training, we'll hold a tea time, which you're more than welcome to stay, discuss, ask questions about today's topic or any other topic that's on your mind. Jose, our fire safety advocate, is going to be hosting that tea time, and I'm going to pass it to him right now for today's words of encouragement.
Thanks a lot, Mike. It's always a pleasure having you on board. And also welcome, Mr. Russell. We truly appreciate that you found time to come. And everybody else, karibuni nyote, welcome from everywhere in Africa. So today, I'm going to share something with us. And there you go. I believe you can see that on my screen. And it's a writing that I got from the internet, and I will read through exactly what it says, because it says, as you can read there, not a competition. You see, in the fire service, we are not competing. Yeah, we're out there and we are mandated to actually serve the people, the community. So the reading goes, it's about a 1-minute read, and it goes like this. Let's get right to it. The fire service is not a competition of who can do it better or what department is better. This is a collective effort to provide the communities we serve in with the best possible outcome during an emergency. I would say we are competitive in nature, but it's gotten to the point where some days the competition turns into mudslinging. There is nothing wrong with taking pride in what you do. Nothing wrong with having a standard. It's just not a competition of who has the best standards. We need to continue to work together as the fire service progresses and stop seeing each other as a threat, problem, or competition. You have a standard. Live up to it consistently and maybe people might model it. Backing at people to adopt your method has never really proven popular. Standards reflect your inner character and are a direct reflection of your life and how you've handled experiences. You can be right or you can be wrong. It's all in how you handle the two. Both can be handled with arrogance or humility. It's really up to you to choose which you will embrace. There is more than one standard in the fire service. There is more than one opinion on leadership, strategy, tactics, promotions, and morale issues. Instead of arguing with each other about our opposing views, we could work to understand each other while realizing that our single-minded view may be incorrect. It happens. I know it's hard to believe, but I've been wrong a multiple of occasions. And then we are not special. We are servants of the public who need to see themselves as such. While I believe I believe what we do is important, I do not believe it entitles me to special treatment. Stop competing for attention, build community, move forward, and we can do this as a team. That article was written by Josh Chase. So I want us to play a 1-minute video. I hope it agrees. It's all about cancer awareness. Just take a look at this 1-minute video, and then after the video, Mike, you can take it over. So let's take a look at this video. I hope it agrees to play. You'll tell me if the volume, I hope the volume is okay. Let's give it a minute. Can you hear the volume, Mike? No. Okay. Okay. I've not yet, just let me, how do I stop it?
You've got it stopped now.
Has the video stopped?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, back to you.
Sure. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate
Sorry, the
those
microphone
words.
went bad, so that's it. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. All right, everyone. We do have everyone in the class muted for the time being. If you have a question, you can place those questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And if at any time during the presentation we're ready to take some questions, we'll let you folks unmute and participate. I'm going to pass it over to Russell now to begin. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen right now, and let's get this one up there, share it. Okay, can everyone see that wonderful screen? Okay, so my name's Russell Osgood. I am my official title is the Vice President of Education for the Firefighter Cancer Support Network here in the United States. I'm also a fire chief in a small town in Maine, where it is quite chilly right now. It's below zero, so I'm in the warm inside of my office, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this information with you. So we're going to talk about occupational cancer in the fire service. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things, and with the idea of time in mind, I'll just keep on going. So what is cancer? Cancer is really a genetic modification at a cellular level that comes from something that triggers it. It could be a number of different things, and we're going to talk about those as we go along here. So some of the causes are environmental, some are genetic, some can be done through modifiable risk factors such as tobacco use or diet, alcohol, things of that nature. So we do see cancer from a lot of different avenues. In the United States, we track line of duty deaths, and at the national level, we have said for decades that heart attack and cardiac arrest are killing firefighters, which is true. But also, we've recently seen through the International Association of Firefighters that there is a significant number of firefighters, more actually dying from cancer, occupationally related cancers. So here's kind of the scope of the problem. We know that through research that 40% of the general population will come down with cancer at some point in their lifetime. We do also know through research that firefighters have a 9% higher chance of being diagnosed by cancer and a 14% higher chance than that 40% of dying from that cancer. So because of our exposures on the fire ground and in our stations, we have a higher risk of either coming down with cancer or dying from cancer. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is those two things: how we can reduce our risk of developing cancer, and how we can reduce our risk from dying from that cancer. Recently, the World Health Organization, through the International Agency of Research on Cancer, classified firefighting as a Group 1 carcinogenic. So basically they're saying that firefighting can lead to certain cancers, including mesothelioma, bladder cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, melanoma, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, from those different things that we're exposed to on the fire ground. In the US, we've had quite a few studies. In fact, across the world, there's been studies in the Nordic countries and in Australia and US, Canada, a lot of different places. And these are some of the cancers that are affecting firefighters, and the percentages above the general population generally that we see them. So we do have a risk for cancer through our exposures. But the good news is that we can do stuff about it. So how do we get exposed? Well, we're exposed through the heat, smoke, and toxins put out during a fire. We can get that through inhalation, ingestion, absorption, through our skin. Dermal absorption is one of the big ones for us that we have to really pay attention to. And then secondary exposures through just the particulates, the dust and the soot from fires. There's some really small particles that you can barely see in the air often, and those are things that we're missing quite a bit. So occupationally, we're exposed to a number of things. This is a interesting slide that shows a lot of the different compounds that we are exposed to. And some of those things are highly carcinogenic, and they're at different levels. At the top, you'll see carbon monoxide and hydrocyanide highlighted. Here in the United States, we use those two for a lot of air monitoring. Unfortunately, that's not really helping us a whole lot here. We really need to not do air monitoring and pay closer attention to just protecting ourselves from smoke, because there's no correlation between the air monitoring tools that we use and all those other compounds in the environment. So what we're telling folks is don't use air monitoring as a way to say it's okay to not use your air, or it's okay not to wear a mask to protect yourself. We really need to be doing that as often as possible. So where do we get exposed? So we get exposed through lots of different things, through structure fires, the typical building fire, exposure to diesel exhaust. Our cars today are full of plastics. Our cooking fires have an avenue of affecting us because overheating oils and that black smoke that comes off of a pan that you're cooking is full of stuff that is bad for us. And then dumpster fires. So with a food on the stove call for us in the US and for you alike, these calls produce a lot of particulate matter that gets into the air that you can be exposed to, including polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs is what I'll call them. They are some compounds that we use to measure the amount of exposure that we have through research. So we know we're getting exposed through pot on the stove calls. And here we kind of have that mindset that it's just food on the stove. And in fact, it really isn't just food on the stove. It's really a toxic environment that we should pay attention to. Diesel exhaust, we've known for decades across the world that this is bad for us to breathe diesel exhaust. And we have a lot of it on our fire grounds and in our fire stations. And we should try to find some ways to mitigate that. We'll talk about mitigation. The plastics and synthetic materials in cars produce a lot of toxins. And then in here, and I don't know your situation with dumpsters, but we have a lot of dumpsters in the US that people just throw lots of trash in, and a lot of that trash is toxic, and you never know what is in a dumpster. So those are some of the calls that we go to that we need to really protect ourselves. And then one of the last things that we're discovering a lot of research on is that the biomass fires, or woods fires, brush fires, grass fires, they're just as bad. So trying to stay out of that smoke becomes important. It's very difficult in these large fires to really protect yourself. And again, we do have a job to do, but there are things that we can do to limit our risk. And that's what we really want to talk about, is limiting our risk. So recently there's been a lot of talk about per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. These are chemicals that are man-made. They've been in the environment for decades, since the 50s. They're typically used for fire retardants and water repellents, and they are found in our turnout gear. Our protective equipment contains it, and in AFFF, or Class B firefighting foams. They do lead to certain cancers, and there's a big push in the US to remove this stuff from our turnout gear and to reduce exposure through limiting PFAS chemicals in the environment. And I think you're going to see this become a worldwide issue quite shortly, because there is no place on the planet, or very few places on the planet, where you do not discover PFAS compounds, and they are not good for us. So we did some research here in the US to see how our skin was impacted, even through our turnout gear. So they took this gentleman here in full protective equipment, put him into a simulator where it simulated a fire, But when they did that, they put in a fluorescent aerosol dye. So prior to him going in, this background UV photo shows him clean. And then the UV photos after, where that aerosol dye crept in through his turnout gear, his protective equipment, you can see is kind of glowing in these other UV photos. And so our equipment does give us some level of protection, but not 100%, right? So we have to remember that for after the fire, what we can do when we don't have our turnout gear, when we're not protected 100%, there are things that we can do to limit this exposure. We just need to know that we're getting exposed. And then we know we're being exposed through research. Again, they did a study in Ottawa, Canada, where they took urine samples pre-fire and then post-fire, and they found that we did have significant higher levels of contaminants that cause cancer in our systems post-fire. So we know that we do have an occupational exposure during a fire. So how can we avoid some of this stuff? So I don't want you to be afraid that you're just going to get cancer because you're in the fire service. There's a lot of things that we can do. A lot of stuff that we can do on a personal level, and a lot of stuff that we can do. I just want to pull up the chat because I see people asking questions. A lot of things that we can do on the fire ground. So on a personal level, we have modifiable risk factors, right? These are risk factors that we all can make some changes on, and we can start right away with tobacco use. So tobacco is actually one of the largest cancer causing, or the largest cancer causing element worldwide is smoking and tobacco use. So if you smoke or you chew tobacco or smoke a pipe or cigars, stop that. That's one of the biggest things you can do to reduce your risk for cancer. And then alcohol consumption, believe it or not, the recommendations from the American Cancer Society now is that we don't drink at all. When we look at cancers in firefighters, we see that colon cancer is elevated. And then if somebody is drinking 3.5 or more drinks per day, they really increase those risks for cancer on top of that, because alcohol is a carcinogenic in itself. So the general rule of thumb that we share with folks is that 1 drink a day for the guys, 2 for the ladies, and you can't like save them up and have them all on one day. So it's a 1 a day kind of thing or 2 a day kind of thing, not 5 or 6 on the weekend. Doesn't work that way. So limiting your alcohol, wearing sunscreen, protecting yourself from the UV radiation. Skin cancer is a real threat to everyone. UV radiation causes a lot of cancers, a lot of skin cancers, and wearing sunscreen protects us from that. What we eat is really an interesting thing. A lot of processed foods are not really what we should be eating. This quote from Michael Pollan at the bottom of the screen, "Eat food, not too much, and mostly plants," is really a great way to put it. In the US here, we have a large obesity problem with firefighters. We have a lot of obese firefighters, which is a big problem for us. So we really talk about nutrition. I hope that you have a great nutrition program there, but really eating real food, calorie dense, normal foods that are not processed are really important. And then not overeating, that's really important as well. So serving size becomes really important. And then mostly plants. There's a lot of good evidence that a plant-based diet is really healthy for us. So we tend to push people towards that. There is a diet called the Mediterranean diet that research has shown is very good for firefighters, and it's easy to follow. So your diet plays a big role in your risk as well. And then fitness. We really push fitness here because of the obesity issue, and because firefighting is such a physically demanding job that being prepared for it is really important. But it also can reduce your cardiovascular risk and your cancer risk by 1/4 to 50%. So that's a significant amount. So having a regular exercise program is really an important role in reducing your overall risk for cancer. And then our sleep. We're really learning more and more about sleep and how important it is for reducing cancer risk, cardiovascular risk, obesity, diabetes, anxiety, all the different things that we see in firefighters. So we have a hard time sleeping in the fire service, apparently, according to research. We have a lot of folks that have a sleep disorder, but really we need to get between 8 to 9 hours of sleep every single day if it's possible. It's very healthy for you. There are some cells in your body called natural killer cells that work while we're sleeping. And if we're not sleeping, they're not working. And if they're not working, they're not cleansing us or controlling some of these cancers that we see. So really important, and try to get some sleep. So in the fire service, we have some best practices. We have some ways that we can do things, and let's talk about those. So, you know, those modifiable risk factors are the personal things you can do. And now let's talk about some things that you can do on the fire ground or in your fire station. And this comes from a bunch of research that we did with the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, and we issued this 11 action items that you can do through a white paper we wrote in 2013, and we're updating this year. But this is really pretty much a standard way of looking at it. So fire station design, it's not an easy thing to deal with. If you're building new fire stations, we like to see these areas where a red zone is where the stuff is dirty, the yellow is where we can get cleaned up, and the green is where we live and eat. This is not practical everywhere in the US. I'm sure it's not practical everywhere in Africa. However, we should have in mind that the dirty stuff stays with the dirty stuff, and where we live, eat, and sleep should remain clean all the time. And we should have a way to make that happen. And that's kind of the premise behind this. Wearing or protecting our respiratory tract is really important. So we see these firefighters all on air when they're in doing overhaul. That's been something in the US that we've fought with for a long time. And I also understand that in Africa, you may not have all the tools that you need, but there are ways to reduce your risk by letting the building cool down. Say you put the fire out and you're going to go in and do some overhaul. If you give it a few minutes to get the smoke out, to reduce that temperature, maybe continue to put some water on it from outside if you can. And then if you don't have SCBA, if you can wear a particulate mask, like an N95 or an N100 or something to protect you from getting the soot into your system, that is really, really critical. We want to remove that risk as much as we can. And then when we talk about diesel exhaust, in the US, we ask firefighters to use source capture. If that's not something that's available to them, we also ask them to don't run the engine inside the building. Make sure you get it outside when it's running and idling. Think about where you put equipment on your apparatus so you're not standing next to the tailpipe on the truck with a diesel exhaust. And if you do run the truck inside, make sure all the apparatus bay doors are open and you exchange the air. Diesel exhaust can stay in the environment for quite a little while. So having a good air exchange in our stations is really important. So clean cab design and newer apparatus, where we are here in the US, is becoming a real thing. And there's some interesting things that come with that. But the premise behind it is to really just keep the dirty stuff out of the cab, and then to clean the cab as much as you can to avoid getting contaminated, responding to those other calls that we go to where we may not be getting contaminated. So instead of having dirty gear in the back or having gear in the back, we have it in an exterior compartment. We make sure that we can wash the floors of the truck and clean off the surfaces really well. In some cases, air filtration systems and systems that make the windows roll up automatically when you put it in pump. There's lots of different and interesting things coming with clean cab, but the idea is that what we don't want is for you to get in the cab with your dirty gear and then leave that stuff that's falling off your gear in the cab. So every time you get in it, you're being exposed again and again. And then in our stations, we ask that we don't bring our PPE into the areas where we live. Our PPE our protective equipment is never really 100% clear. In the old days here in the US of wearing that as a badge of honor, of saying, you know, my gear is all dirty, it shows that I did a great job. That's not really a thing. The way that you look as a firefighter, the dirty gear and all of that stuff does not mean that you're a great firefighter. It just means that you got dirty. So, you know, clean gear is the new cool, is what we're trying to tell folks. It's really important that you do take time to clean your gear and make sure that it's ready for the next call. So how do we do that kind of stuff? Well, we do it through preliminary exposure reduction. So we'll talk about that. So after a fire, during a fire, we have an area where there's lots of smoke and soot present. That would be the hot zone. And then we kind of establish a warm area where we can get out of that hot zone and we can start the process of decontaminating our bodies, taking our gear off, and getting our way to the cold zone where we can do a little bit of rehabilitation, get some water and drinks, and get our equipment back in order. One thing that we do here is that we know that wet decon of our turnout equipment, of our gear, our protective equipment, reduces those surface contaminants by up to 85%, which is a significant amount. So that means that we just use soap and water, basically. We spray down the gear with water, put a soap solution on it, scrub it down, and then spray it with water again, and that reduces some of those surface contaminants, and it starts that process. And then for your body, when we saw that that fluorescent aerosol screening test where we saw we had that contamination on our skin, we want you to start to remove that contamination as soon as possible. So we do that through the use of wipes, wet wipes, like baby wipes or soap and water, just washing those areas, your hands, your head, your neck, behind your ears, cleaning as much of that soot and particulate off your skin as possible before you get back to the firehouse, before you have the opportunity to take a shower, to reduce those contaminants on your body. And then we like to recommend that you take your gear, your equipment, and you put it in a bag if it's contaminated and bring it back to your station to be cleaned. That way it's not in the cab, it's not dirty, it doesn't look like this gentleman's gear while it's in the cab, and we're keeping those contaminants out of our cabs and off of our other firefighters that are around. And then we have this interesting shower within the hour is what we're asking folks to do. And it's really shower as soon as you can. We want you to clean your body first. Your body has been contaminated. It's got a lot of stuff on it. You know, we know through research that the sooner we get that off, the better off we are. So go back to your firehouse or go home, take a shower, clean yourself really well, soap and water, and then take care of your equipment and tools following that. And to clean your gear, here in the US, we use these commercial washing machines, and not everyone has them. So there are some other ways to do that. If you can use a trash can or something that would have a significant amount of water, and you use soap and water and really wash the shell separate from the liner, and wash it and in that water, and then rinse it and allow it to dry before you use it again, you're really going to be doing yourself a favor. If you do have a washer or an extractor like this, that's great. If you don't, just remember, you can wash it by hand to some level, and it's never 100% clean. Our gear will never be 100% clean. It's always going to have some level of contaminant in it. So we just need to remember that. I'm going to skip the exposure tracking because it doesn't apply, but early cancer detection. So we just talked about a whole bunch of things that you can do to limit your exposure. Now, it's really important that we also talk about doing things that can catch cancer early, because the best way to survive cancer is to catch it as early as possible. So one of those things is performing monthly self-exams. That would be testicular exams for the men and breast exams for women firefighters. And we know that these fine cancers and these cancers can be treated if they're found really early. So, and that also means getting annual medical exams and talking with your doctor about the risk of cancer. Here in the US, the NFPA requires firefighters to get annual physicals, and that's great. If it's not something that you do, we'll talk about what you can do if you do find something. If you do have a physician that you talk to regularly, you like to talk to them about the risk that firefighters face for cancer, we have this screening exam document that was made by a Boston firefighter that is now a physician that talks about different things that we can get that look for cardiac and cancer risk there. I'm more than happy to share this with you through the Africa Fire Mission. So you can have it to take to your doctor, because there are things that we can do at younger ages for firefighters to detect cancer early. If you have the opportunity to have a cancer screening, we recommend that you do that, although you just need to be aware that these screenings are a snapshot in time of the moment that you had the blood drawn or the screening done. It doesn't necessarily mean that 10 days from now or 2 years from now that you're still clean from cancer, or if you get a positive that you need to follow up on it. So, but we recommend you get screening tests whenever they're available. So we talked a little bit about prevention, wearing SCBA if it's available, or protecting your respiratory tract, wiping the soot off of your stuff, showering, keeping your bunking gear out of living quarters, make sure it's clean. But let's talk about early detection. And these are the things that you can do to discover cancer early and make a difference in the outcome. So we know that certain cancers found localized or in stage 1 is what localized is, have a much better survival rate than those cancers found when they're in stage 4 or distant, so they've traveled out. So it's a lot like arriving on the scene early, finding a small fire and putting it out with a small amount of water versus arriving later in the fire and needing multiple pumpers and apparatus and things to take care of that fire. And skin cancer is one of those things, melanoma. You have a very high chance of surviving from a stage 1 melanoma and a much less chance of surviving from a stage 4 melanoma. So that means finding it early is really, really important. So we often get asked, what is the most common sign and symptom of cancer? And it's just a subtle and persistent health change that lasts more than 2 weeks. That's really what it is. It's not a sign or a symptom, although those things are part of it. It's not a single thing. It's something that really is, that you can notice that lasts for a while. And so what we want to share with you is this early detection model of 3 steps to detect is what it's called. 3 steps to detect. So let's remember what your grate feels like, use the 2-week rule, and then share it with your doctor. Pretty simple. Remembering what your grate feels like means that we all have aches and pains. We all have varying energy levels, but we all should know what is great for us, what feels good for us. So if you have an ache or pain that is not normal, that should set a thought process going in your head to think about, okay, well, this is not normal. I need to take a note of this and check back on it. Or visible changes, something on your skin that doesn't look normal, or your bathroom habits. You go into the bathroom and things are a lot different. You see blood in your stool. It's just not right. It's different than it normally is. Or you're just super tired and you can't get out of your own way. You're having a tough time at work, keeping up with everyone. Those are things that could be unusual. So if you know what your grate feels like when you find something that is not normal, you can make note of it, and then you're going to use the 2-week rule. So if that symptom, that sign, that thing that is bothering you, made you think that this is not normal for me, lasts for more than 2 weeks, then you need to go to step 3. But it's important that you remember to take note of it and track that. Use a smartphone, use a calendar, write it on the calendar to check back in with yourself in 2 weeks. Use your phone if you have one, put a reminder in your phone, a lot of different things. But in 2 weeks, if it's still there, then you need to go see your doctor and talk with them. And that means that you need to be prepared to share all the information with your doctor. Don't leave anything out. you have to be an advocate for your own healthcare. No matter where you are, this is how doctors are busy. They see lots of patients, and I don't know how the healthcare industry works in your country, but when you go see that doctor, share all the information and then be aware of what the next steps are, is what be aware is. So once you go in, share all the info, then the doctor says, okay, we're going to send you for a test. Then you need to understand what happens after that test. So you're advocating for your own healthcare. Those three things put together really can make a difference in finding cancer early. And that's really the best way to survive cancer, is to detect it early. So within the culture of the fire service, and I think this resonates across the world, we have in the US cowboy stance, or an old school stance to firefighting. But over the years, we've found things that have made us want to change. And one of those things was bloodborne pathogens. The AIDS epidemic struck, and that made a lot of people think about this. And in this picture, you see a medical personnel with no gloves. We would not do that in the US, and I don't think you'd see that anywhere in the world anymore, because we know that those pathogens were really, the bloodborne pathogens were really affecting us. So we made a change in our culture, and we need to do that in the fire service as well. So how do we do that? Well, we can do it through organizational culture change. And that means that everybody has to be on the same page, whether it's a chief officer, a company officer, labor, our government leadership, or you as an individual. We need to take responsibility and learn, act, and be held accountable. So we know that in the US, we know that when we involve our government leadership and labor management together, we can get a lot done. So we like to talk about it, and we do need a culture change around this subject. Even here in the US, we have all of the tools that you would want as a firefighter right in our hand. They're all there, but yet we see people not using them. I understand that a lot of times where you are, you don't have all the tools. So what I would love to see you do is to use the tools you have and help change that culture, so we can learn from you that there are simple things that we can do, and we have it really good here. So it would be great to have worldwide acceptance of this issue, and maybe we can help each other develop skills and tools that can benefit us all. So the Firefighter Cancer Support Network here in the US, we provide survivorship. This is Mike Dubron. He started this organization, and we work with a whole bunch of folks. And what it does is, this is something that you could replicate in Africa. Mike was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and he found that other firefighters were the best people to talk to. So what he did is he started this network. And I'm happy to share some of this stuff, and I'm happy to send some stuff to you, Jose, and the members over there, if you would like it. I'm more than willing to do that. But we have a survivor's guide and these toolkits that go out. But the biggest thing we do is we provide peer-to-peer support. So you could do this just in your own fire station. If you have a member in your firehouse that has cancer, and you can find another firefighter that has had that cancer and connect them, that support group is really essential. It really works well. Wrong way, sorry. And we do these trainings and things across the world. That's really what I have. It's really about choices that we make. It's about the things that you do that can affect you and your family. One of the things that I'd really like to say is, I don't want you to be in fear of being a firefighter. There's an inherent risk to firefighting that we all accept, including the person here that passed away from occupational cancer. This gentleman at this funeral is a good friend of mine, Jeff Bokum. He knew the risks. He made some choices that, he let his cancer go a little bit too long, and that might have been that might have been part of the problem. So there are things that you can do. There's those steps that you can take, and if you do them, then you reduce that risk of occupational cancer, and that's what we're talking about. So enjoy the fire service. I've loved it for the last 38 years, and I'm happy to be here and answer any questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell, for that that excellent presentation. If anyone has any questions, you can use the raise hand, and we'll let you guys ask a few questions here. Looks like we've got a question up in the chat here. If you find that you're diagnosed with cancer and you're not using the okay, so basically he's asking, if you do get occupational cancer, but they find out that you weren't using your equipment, what sort of happens there? And that's probably a tough question for us to answer. Russell, because we don't know, how the individual agencies work there.
Yeah, that will depend on, so in the United States, we have presumptive legislation that gives us the ability to, it's presumed, so it's, if somebody's diagnosed with certain cancers, it's assumed or presumed that it was occupationally related. I don't know, I'd be more than willing to send you some of the information on that, and maybe you can get that started, that process started in your country, but that would be a local thing.
Emmanuel, I see you've got your hand raised there. Tell us what's going on over in Ghana.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, officers, and Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. It's been a while, but I hope my brothers, my sisters, everybody is doing well on this particular platform. And first of all, I just want to say big thank you to the team. You guys are doing a great job, because looking at things that I've learned from here tells me that we have a long way to go as a firefighters. And we've been doing this and we don't know the consequences of it. Even yesterday, we went for a fire outbreak. Even not even a fire jacket or tunics. Some of us are wearing overalls, and if you not even a BA briefing apparatus. So if you see the kind of smoke that we are inhaling into our system, the kind of heat that generating on our body tells us that we have a long way to do. So for us to meet here and learn about cancer, how cancer can affect a firefighter is a huge cost. And we thank the team for a very good job that you guys are doing for firefighters. So I will not speak much. What I want to say is very big thank you to the team and the help that you guys are helping us. May God richly bless you guys. Bless African Fire Mission. Thank you.
Well, hey, one of the things that we also talk about a lot is the way we approach fire. If you go to a fire and there's no risks involved, like no personnel risk in the building, there's no one that needs to be rescued, there's no exposures, there's really no reason to take a lot of risk. So do that risk benefit analysis. If you can stay outside and not inhale the smoke and get hit and from the stuff from cancer, then those are things that you can change your tactics, I guess, a little bit to mitigate your exposure. If in fact that you can change your tactics. There are times where you have to put your neck out a little bit to do a little bit more, but that's something in the US, here in the US, that we're really trying to get guys to understand, is that there are times where it's not necessary to be the hero. There's no one in risk. There's no reason to do that. So That's great. I'm sad to hear that you don't have all the proper protective equipment, but I understand why as well. It's expensive stuff. And if I can, thinking about it, I have some equipment that if the Africa Fire Mission sends equipment, I would be willing to help with. So yeah, that's
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And one thing is, looking at Africa or Ghana specific, where I work as a firefighter, we drive like 1 hour, 30 minutes to attend an emergency. Tells you for fire engine to drive like 1 hour, 30 minutes before you reach a fire scene tells you a lot.
Yeah.
So before you get there, the people there are angry. If you don't do something,
Yeah.
they lynch you, they spoil your fire engine for you, they will beat you up. So always when you go there, you need to take risk for them to know that you are doing your best, because already the country has failed. But it's our mandate. When you go there, you need to do something. We need to educate them, but still they are human beings. They don't get you that where you are coming from is very far. So they have patience for you, or they can ask you one or two things. That what happened? All they need is they have a house is on fire. So they're expecting you within a minute for you to come and do your best. But due to one or two things, you don't have the facilities. I don't think it's possible for someone drive 1 hour, 30 minutes before reaching the fire scene. It's not possible.
No.
But we have only one fire engine across where we are working. So in this case, the works always makes it difficult, and you don't talk to them, they will beat you up. They will beat you up.
That's a tough
But we are,
situation.
yes, we are doing our best. And my brother Jose is always calling us to, talk to us when you go to a fire scene, do this, do that, talk to them politely. After the firefighting, you can take a motorbike, a car to go there and sit them down. So the kind of things that African Fire Mission is doing to us is special, is very good, because always they've been educating us, and through that education, we are also picking something from it and talking to our community that we are working with. So of late, through African Fire Mission and things that we are learning it from, I think right now things are changing. Things are changing. Right now, if there is fire outbreak, initially they don't call.
I think we
Thank
lost
you, Ido.
there.
Truly appreciate you with your comments. Mr. Russell, I have quite an interesting question. I don't know if it's a question or a comment, because I've been doing a lot of rounds in these firehouses. And this topic of cancer is really, should I say foreign, or people don't want us talk about it? They feel a little bit like, if you talk about it, it's going to show up, So and again, because we are so many males in the fire service, there's that aspect of a question that I really got, which is interesting, and it didn't have an answer. Maybe you can help here. Is I've seen on the percentage on the data that on the prostate, we are actually 99% of chances to get the cancer. So the other thing is, if that is the case, because we are men, and I know our sisters can understand this, what goes on in terms of identity, and also how can you get to know, like, oops, I think these are the symptoms of my prostate is needs some checkup? And also number two, where can we get help? Because the ladies they usually go for breast cancer checkups, their cervical checkups. We don't have advocacy in regards to prostate checkups, you know. So do you have an idea how we can go about that? And yeah, what goes on when that is being checked?
Oh, no,
Sorry, I need a little bit sensitive.
A dog is a madam.
Yeah, so the testicular cancer and prostate cancer are both elevated in firefighters. It's very true. So yes, it's one of those. It's one of those cancers that can really go undetected for a long time because it doesn't have a ton of signs and symptoms. So it really relies on a blood test called a PSA to see if it's elevated. That's something that here in the States, we've asked doctors to do at much younger ages for firefighters. If you look at the data around prostate cancer, your chances, the way that it's explained to me is if you're 70 years old, you have a 70% chance of having prostate cancer or cancer in general. At 80, you have 80%. At 90, you have a 90%. If you live to be 100, you have some form of cancer in your body. It's just the way it is. Worldwide, that's the way we work. For firefighters, we're pushing the age back a little bit, you know, so we do see that firefighters in the 50s and 60s now are getting more testicular cancer and more prostate cancer, which is scary. But really the only way to detect prostate cancer is to have a digital exam to see if it's if your prostate is enlarged, and that would be with your doctor, or a PSA. Some of the signs and symptoms, if you're having difficulty urinating, that might be something you want to think about. That also can come to bladder cancer. I can send some information on some of the specific firefighting cancers. We just finished, and I don't have them available quite yet, but I'll get them to you. That they talk about all the different specific firefighting related cancers and a little bit about each and maybe what you can do. Is that good? I'll make a note. Mike, do I send it to you and then you can forward it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, you can
hey,
send it to Mike.
Jose?
Yo, Ben. Yes,
Hey,
Ben, sir, go ahead.
One thing I'm gonna add to that is, one, that's where legislation comes in. You see what I'm saying? Is that we keep pushing on legislation through the government so we can start having some of the supports. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
We need to have doctors involved in our conversations because they are the ones that have the brains to figure out what we don't know. Second thing, we need to have a reality check when it comes to traditions. You see, as a Kenyan, I know that. Take yourself a few years. When somebody got AIDS, nobody talked about it. Then they died because they didn't have any form of treatment. Now, we might not cure AIDS, but with treatment, it might buy you another 10, 15 years. And through legislation, through like Bono and all those people, the education about AIDS was able to be put out, right? So we just need to understand the facts that we live in the 2023. Cancer is a big deal. And as men, we need to be honest with ourselves. It's okay to have your prostate checked. That doesn't mean you're not a man enough, right? Because I know that's one thing we have an issue with. I can't tell anybody I have issues with my prostate because that's not manly. So when we have a lot of us from AFM join together and start advocating for this, then I'm able to come to the station and say, hey, boss, I don't feel good in my prostate. My prostate is enlarged, you know? And they're like, okay, let's talk to Dr. So-and-so because he's our advocate when it comes to this matter. So let's think about our traditions, think about the theology and the beliefs we have about manlyhoodness. Because if we take that out, then we are able to move forward. So that's how I'd say that.
Very good. That's spot on. I think that's right. The legislative fixes that in the US, we've done a lot through legislative acts. So we work a lot with local politicians, federal politicians, to make sure that the things that are affecting us get addressed, because I don't have the money to address all of it, right? And I'm sure none of you have the money to address it. So we have to rely on the government to step in and kind of help out. They're the ones that are putting us, we have to provide this service, so they need to help us out when and if we get sick as well. So
Yeah.
hey, you're
I'm
right,
sorry,
you're
what-
spot on there.
Right. One last thing on that, real quick. Jose, take the pictures from Mombasa, the fire that happened last week. I want to call Chief Yusuf and congratulate him on that. But the pictures we see there, if those guys don't get cancer, I don't know, man. But they were when you see a black man and they have suit on them, that's a lot of suit. You know what I'm saying? And we need save those
Good point.
pictures because they need to see, our government needs to see this. In the educational part of our community, the community needs to see that because they saved a factory, but that factory will not be paying for their funeral benefits down the road. That was a very good example when I showed to my colleagues. That's the first thing they noticed. And they say that fire wasn't important enough to risk about 10, 15 people in that. So save those pictures and start collecting that data like that so that we can start using those live pictures to the community and to our leaders.
Yes, sir. Back to you, Mike, as you close the session. We enter the second session, and then we shall have Samuel and Milka. You will answer the question, we'll answer your question right after Mike stops the video. Russell, stay on.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Russell, for that great presentation that you gave. There's tons of useful information there. I would invite everyone to join us again next week. We're going to continue with this sort of the health theme for next week. And if you want to see this presentation again, the recording is going to be available later today or tomorrow on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Africa Fire Mission. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again next week.